It's the Church of Jesus Christ.
For years, I watched D. James Kennedy, and I so appreciated his ministry and his message. I wouldn't miss a message.
As a Christian, and especially as a Christian that cares about worldview and apologetics and biblical truth, I so love and appreciate Coral Ridge Ministries.
For more than 50 years now, Coral Ridge Ministries has been preaching the gospel to America and beyond. The national religious broadcasters highlighted the work that began in the pulpit of Coral Ridge under Dr. Kennedy as they presented the 2024 Milestone Award.
Coral Ridge Ministries, marking 50 years of profound gospel outreach, continues the vision first articulated by its founding pastor, D. James Kennedy, at the new church building's construction site in the early 1970s. His aspiration was for the gospel of Jesus Christ to be spread through every available medium to the entire world.
Am I trying to Christianize America? You bet your boots I am.
His foresight led to the establishment of Coral Ridge Ministries in 1974, harnessing the vast potential of mass media to spread the gospel. Dr. Kennedy's vision expanded from local radio broadcasts in Fort Lauderdale to a television program that would reach viewers across America and the world. Coral Ridge Ministries also launched impactful initiatives like the Reclaiming America for Christ Conference. Coral Ridge Ministries' commitment to broadcasting the gospel is evident in its production of over 100 documentary specials, including the impactful Christmas special, Who Is This Jesus?, watched by millions. Today, Coral Ridge Ministries continues its mission under the leadership of Dr. Robert J. Pacienza.
Maybe he ought to pray that the Lord might want to use him as one of those Christian leaders of the 21st century, perhaps right here, where I'm standing.
As Coral Ridge Ministries looks to the future, it upholds its founding vision to use all available media to make Christ known and advance a biblical worldview. Dr. Pacienza, a spiritual protege of Dr. Kennedy, carries this legacy forward, committed to reaching the world with the gospel and addressing today's moral and social issues with biblical wisdom.
And through the years, as the gospel has gone forth from the Coral Ridge pulpit, the influence has been quite profound.
I just thank God that there are men like James Kennedy who are standing in the gap, reminding men and women of the moral focus that we need in this nation.
Perhaps 35 years ago, my wife-to-be took me to a conference with Dr. D. James Kennedy here in Montgomery, Alabama. I was a graduate of Vanderbilt Law School, and it took a minister to explain to me the real meaning of the First Amendment and to open my eyes to what our founding fathers had intended. In the law school that I attended, we didn't read the Constitution, we only read what judges said about it. And after that eye-opening experience from Dr. Kennedy, I began a course of self-study and self-education about what the foundation of this country was. I am just internally grateful to Dr. Kennedy for giving me understanding, prompting me on this lifelong journey that's had such a profound impact on me and I hope on my state.
And D. James Kennedy himself played a major role in the trajectory of our country and equipping Christians with a biblical worldview.
And Coral Ridge Ministries, following the path blazed by Dr. Kennedy, continues its vital work under the leadership of Dr. Rob Pacienza. Recently, the ministry relaunched the D. James Kennedy Center for Christian Statesmanship in Washington, D.C.
How important is it to have the D. James Kennedy Center for Christian Statesmanship? Incredibly important.
The center in our nation's capital is now under the leadership of former advisor to President Trump, William Russell.
It's incredibly important to be here in D.C., to have a presence.
There's also the Institute for Faith and Culture, led by Lauren Cooley, to assist pastors and churches to apply the mind of Christ to today's issues.
Look, the Lord asks us to be informed and involved in culture and all spheres of life. We're very familiar with the Great Commission, but there's also the cultural mandate.
Coral Ridge Ministries also includes today providenceforum.org, founded by Dr. Peter Lilbeck, and I have the privilege to currently lead that outreach. Our goal is to educate Christians on this nation's biblical roots. That includes our Foundation of American Liberty film series.
George Washington was a man on whom God's hand lay.
Another recent initiative of Coral Ridge Ministries is the City of God podcast.
This is the City of God podcast, where Christ meets culture.
Hosted by Dr. Rob Pacienza, with John Rabe as co-host.
Podcasts are an incredible medium in which to disseminate information and to really help people understand what's happening in real time. I think the speed in which we can produce podcasts and distribute it to our audience is phenomenal.
On top of this, Coral Ridge Ministries has expanded into a daily radio version of Truths That Transform, as well as a daily radio commentary, Christ Meets Culture.
And this is where Christ meets culture.
As the ministry goes forth through various outlets, consider an example of a life and a family transformed through this broadcast outreach.
My family has watched Coral Ridge on television for many, many years, but I especially, on a personal note, I want to say how much I loved and appreciated the late, great Dr. D. James Kennedy, because my parents in their early 60s recommitted their lives to Christ in the mid-1980s watching D. James Kennedy on television.
He was a Christian.
And to be quite honest, in the late 70s, early 80s, we really weren't involved in church like we could have been or should have been. My mom and dad, at a point of great financial duress, bankruptcy, about to be evicted from our house. I came in one day, I was a college student, and I was not yet a believer myself, but my parents called my sister and myself, and they gathered us around the coffee table to pray over the family checkbook. But my dad, who was a World War II vet, not a real emotional guy, but he said, "Children, your mother and I have recommitted our lives to Jesus Christ. We were believers anyway, but we've been watching a man on television named Dr. D. James Kennedy." Now, I still to this day have VHS tapes that my parents got, and then at 21, I, in college, gave my life to Christ, but so much of what I learned about biblical worldview, apologetics, and then I later learned names like Chuck Colson and Francis Schaeffer, but my family had a radical return to Christ in the mid to late 1980s through the television ministry of Dr. D. James Kennedy.
Alex, who has preached in countless American churches and spoken or debated on scores of college campuses, is grateful for the ongoing work of Coral Ridge Ministries.
I've had the great honor of meeting Dr. Robert Pacienza, who is now the pastor of Coral Ridge and doing such a great work just in the spirit and tradition of Dr. D. James Kennedy, the gospel of Jesus Christ, biblical worldview content, changing many lives. And I rejoice that God is still in a powerful way using Coral Ridge, and D. James Kennedy's legacy goes on now through Pastor Pacienza.
Well, congratulations to Coral Ridge Ministries for 50 years of proclaiming truth. And it's never been harder, I think, than to proclaim truth than right now in this cultural moment where people don't even believe in truth anymore.
Coral Ridge Ministry has a long reputation for doing great work, for being a light amidst the darkness. What's really exciting, though, about Coral Ridge, frankly, is how Coral Ridge Ministry is moving forward and how you're expanding your influence and your impact on the world so that that light is shining brighter and brighter, frankly, than ever before.
I think Dr. Kennedy would be very pleased to know that Coral Ridge Ministries is true and strong and moving forward in the 21st century. And I can say on behalf of Christians everywhere, we need Coral Ridge more than ever.